Welcome to Bellingham Voices. I'm your host, Deb Slater. The City of Bellingham has issued a permit for a temporary tent encampment right behind City Hall. It's called Winter Haven. Now, a little later in the show, we're going to talk to Jim Peterson from HomesNOW, Not Later. That's the group organizing the camp. But right now, we're joined by the city's Planning and Community Development Department Director, Rick Sepler. Thanks for joining us, Rick.
Happy to be here.
So tell us about the issue of homelessness in Bellingham. What is the scope of this problem?
Well, I think we have to look nationally, and then we have to look at the West Coast, then we have to look at Washington. Homelessness is not a focused and localized event. It's not unique to Bellingham, unfortunately. As we've seen changes in the cost of living, significant increases in housing costs in successful markets, we've seen frozen wages, and we've seen people who've fallen out of housing with no recourse. And homelessness, unfortunately, is growing in America, and specifically in areas that are prospering and seeing increase in property values, like the West Coast. And we're feeling that here in Western Washington, perhaps most acutely. And Bellingham, about 815 folks on a given evening are unsheltered.
Wow. I've heard people say that the homelessness in Bellingham is because we're so close to the Canadian border. Is there any truth to that?
There are a number of myths that have been created to try to explain homelessness. Folks say folks were trying to make it north to Alaska to mine gold and they couldn't get across the border.
Right.
That's not factual. When we look consistently at the point-in-time counts, that's what gives us the number of homeless on any given point in time. It's done once a year. We scrupulously, teams of volunteers, search the area, find folks in encampments, count people in temporary shelters, as well as other interim facilities. We find consistently that 70% of those who are homeless in Whatcom County, their last known address was Whatcom County. They're from here. Now, they may be from Maple Falls or Linden or Blaine, but they do come to Bellingham because Bellingham is the place that has the services. So the two myths we have are folks are on their way somewhere else, and that people come here because of the Taj Mahal type services we offer. It's untrue. If that were the case, people are going to all of the locations on the West Coast for similar services. And if folks think we are offering sort of first-class services, I'd encourage them to go to Lighthouse Mission and see what it looks like when 80 people are sleeping on mats on the floor.
That's no Taj Mahal.
No.
No. So let's talk about Winter Haven. The city has issued a permit for this temporary camp. How did this come about?
The need for temporary camps is unfortunate. Because of the graciousness and confidence the residents of Bellingham have in its city, they approved a housing levy, and they instructed us very clearly to build housing for those who are most vulnerable and need it. Unfortunately, as fast as we're building, we're not able to catch up with the demand of those who are unsheltered. I should say of about those 800 folks who are unsheltered, about 500 find shelter on a given night.
That's quite amazing.
And those folks are the ones that are perhaps easiest to serve. They're the moms with kids. They're the folks who, through accident or loss of work, fell out of housing. All they need is get put back on the ladder and they can climb again. The last 300 are the most challenging. Those are the folks we see on the street. Those are the most complex individuals out there, whether it's alcoholism or drugs, abuse, or other circumstance. They are the hardest to serve. And right now, we have limited facilities to serve them. We need to look for short-term measures that could accommodate these folks till we could build more permanent facilities.
Enter HomesNOW, Not Later with the Winter Haven idea. Talk about the process, the permitting process for a project like this.
So we did go through a fairly rigorous process to identify how we would evaluate applications. And I should say we already have a number of beds that are provided in the community. The Lighthouse Mission, who accept no city funding, provide a very useful service by housing up to, I believe it's 80 people in their drop-in center in an evening and perhaps 150 unsheltered in their programs. There are more in their programs overall. The Fountain Community Church are currently taking 40 women every evening who are unsheltered, providing accommodations, and they'll take additional people in extreme cold weather. we've worked on that program. In looking at that, we identified 4 different ways we could accommodate this short-term need. And we have to be mindful. Where we locate them raises a number of issues, both for the residents of the encampment as well as for neighbors.
Sure.
And we want to find a fair way of addressing it. So we've identified the need for temporary tent encampments. That's what Winter Haven is, and we'll talk about that in a second in its process. We talked about temporary encampments in existing buildings. We talked about safe parking areas. That's been done in Southern California, where folks just need a safe place to park overnight because they live in their vehicles. And we have a lot of folks in Whatcom County who live in their vehicles. And finally, we talked about tiny homes, which are a little longer solution, but do provide a little more permanence and perhaps greater amenity to guests in these facilities. In no case do we view these as an end and a destination. These are waypoints. That's basically getting folks, we need to connect them with services, and we need to get them out of these facilities as fast as we can. In doing that, on the temporary tent encampment, for example, we provide notice. We work with the applicant on a strict set of standards. Our standards are really focused on public health and public safety. Our most important mission is to make sure that the guests who reside in these temporary encampments, as well as the neighbors, are safe. And that's a healthful environment, and that issues, those kind of issues that can arise, have responses and strategies to address them. Once we receive an application, we notice folks within 500 feet. We publish materials, we post the site, we take comments. In the case of Winter Haven, we received 19 comments, some in favor and supportive, and some expressing significant concern. And we consider that at the end of the day, after considering all the public comment, reviewing the application, assessing the site, we use our professional skills to promulgate a decision. And that decision says, really, did it meet the requirements or not? And in order to be able to get an approval, it has to meet all of the requirements.
There's a reason the process is in place. It's really important, isn't it?
It's a very important process to provide those assurances. There are lots of folks who have a great deal of passion and want to help, except sometimes we find that the circumstances of providing the help actually make the circumstance worse for folks who are unsheltered.
Right.
Towards that end, we want to find that best practice where we can ensure that folks who reside in a temporary encampment receive case management, aren't just warehoused, and we find a way to move them forward into more permanent housing.
So the process from the city's perspective now, the permit has been approved, but there's still an appeals process after that, correct?
Right.
Yeah.
It's really important that we have due process, that folks who've raised concerns, if they feel we have not fairly evaluated, have the ability to appeal to the city's hiring examiner. It's a 14-day period, and during that time, you can't operate the camp. However, we have signed a separate license agreement. We have a unique role in the case of Winter Haven because we're not only the review body, but we're also the landlord. And in the landlord role, we've signed a license agreement for use of that portion of our parking lot that would allow HomesNOW to stage and to set up so that they're ready to roll when the appeal period tolls. Now, I should say that if appeal does come in, appeals are considered on whether there are errors of fact or errors of law. To the best of our professional ability, based on the information we have in the record, we believe we don't have errors of fact or law. However, fairly, someone in the community who's affected can have a concern and wish to file an appeal. In this case, because of the emergency, we'd want to be expedient in its review. Allow for due process, allow for folks to argue their point, but we have already spoken with our hearing examiner. That's the person who hears these appeals of administrative decisions, and we reserve dates so that we can move forward and get people off the streets in the coldest of weather into this facility.
What are some of the requirements from the city's perspective on Winter Haven?
A number of requirements. We have a number that are inside the ordinance themselves, and we've met all of those. Those are largely health safety, restroom facilities, water, washing, cooking, the way the camp is configured, control of access, not to hold people in, but to keep people out.
Right. Yep.
Often folks are victimized when they're homeless. Their materials are stolen, their things, their belongings, their last belongings are stolen. And HomesNOW will have 24-hour on-site not by residents, but by volunteers or board members, supervision of the site. There'll be check-in and check-out. Folks are entitled to have guests, just like any home, but we need to make sure that folks are monitored so that it's the safest environment that's there. HomesNOW proposed a number of things, and I do need to laud them. We've had a number of suggestions that came forward that were not strictly in the ordinance, but we felt would be best practices, and they agreed. And I think their interest is to have a camp that would be successful and to show that this temporary encampment would be a model for others that could occur. We also address some of the issues associated with surrounding area. There has been a propensity in other locations that do temporary encampments to have an increase of folks who camp or loiter in the area. And we've worked with our police department, we've worked with HomesNOW to discourage that as best we can. Folks have a right to be on the streets and use public space, probably don't have a right to camp in a riparian corridor.
What can we do as a community to prevent the growth of homelessness in our city?
I think we've already done a significant amount. Bellingham has done something that's truly remarkable and a model for the state. By passing the home fund, the housing levy, they've really given us the ability to leverage those dollars and get permanent facilities constructed. And we're working towards that. I wish we could go faster. The second thing is to acknowledge that homelessness is a much broader issue than the folks they just see on the street. Those on the street are the most complex of individuals. They typically require a great deal of resources to address the concerns they've got. That's why they're not caught in the safety net earlier. But to acknowledge that homelessness means folks were shocked to find out that many of the folks applying for Winter Haven have jobs. They get up in the morning and go to work. A number are disabled and have disability payments that are coming in. The greatest increase in homelessness right now are in elders whose fixed income, Social Security and others, aren't able to keep up with rising rents. A very sad occurrence is folks are discharged from nursing homes where Medicare funds their service, and they're dropped off at the mission because there's nowhere for them to go. So I guess the sense is to understand the totality of it, to support the ongoing efforts we have, to realize these temporary measures are truly temporary, that the intent is not to make them permanent. There's always need for volunteer in many of the social service agencies we have that serve the homeless, and it's a diverse. The city spends over $4 million a year as seed money or actually funding a number of services that really make a difference and get people back into housing.
You mentioned the Lighthouse Mission. Are there other specific programs that we can support to help the actual homeless community?
Sure. Opportunity Council, Northwest Youth Services, all provide services to the homeless. The Interfaith Coalition is very supportive. Their Family Promise program, where individual churches are taking families in for a period of time to get them back on their feet. There's no shortage of places to support, and I encourage our community members to continue their support of these efforts.
And of course, HomesNOW Not Later is also looking for volunteers
Yes.
for Winter Haven. And thank you so much for joining us, Rick. Really appreciate the city's perspective on Winter Haven and the homelessness issue in general. And when we come back, we'll talk to Jim Peterson from HomesNOW Not Later on Bellingham Voices. Welcome back to Bellingham Voices. I'm your host, Deb Slater. Today we are talking about Winter Haven, the temporary tent encampment for the homeless right behind City Hall. The group that's organizing Winter Haven is HomesNOW Not Later, and the president of that group is Jim Peterson, and he joins us here now. Thanks for being here, Jim.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, now I heard that at one point you were homeless. Do you care to share a little bit about that?
I was homeless for 17 years. In 1975, I got out of the Navy. And my dad was a lifer in the Navy, so when I called him and said I was out, he said, I don't own you anymore and don't come home. And that was in 1975 in San Diego, California.
How old were you?
I was 19.
Okay.
I went in the Navy when I was 17 because I was a problem child, so they gave me a choice of going to the High State Penitentiary or joining the service. And I said, I'll be right down to the recruiter. And served 2 years in the Navy, and then didn't re-enlist because it wasn't for me, and I still had my drug problem. And when I called my parents, they said, you're not coming home, we don't own you anymore. And they disowned me as their son. And at first it was kind of cool. I hitchhiked all over the country. I went from San Diego over to Florida, and then up to New York, and then across to Washington. And then after about a year, it wasn't fun anymore. And my drug addiction was really full bore. And I ended up back in San Diego and living on the streets. And then I lived on the streets in LA for a while. And then I came up to Portland, Oregon in the 80s and met a guy named Tony. And him and me were inseparable. It was like he was my long-lost brother. So we stayed pretty much together, and then we went down to Mexico for a year and were homeless in Mexico.
Wow.
Just because we wanted to see what it was like.
Yeah.
Kind of tourist down there, and it was amazing. We hardly slept outside any night because families would invite us in and feed us.
Wow.
So we did that for a year, and then we came back and we said, what's our next adventure? And so we went to Canada for about a year and a half, and didn't like that very much. They're pretty much like America. They didn't like homeless people either. And then came back, and when it was winter, like weather like this, we'd go down south to Arizona. So we were down in Yuma, Arizona, sitting on the Colorado River in our chairs fishing, and waiting to go to work, and this other homeless guy walked up and said, you guys need to go to Moorhead, Minnesota. And we're like, huh? And this is in the end of March. And we're like, why? Because they're helping people get off the streets. And him and me had been out there for about 10 years now. And we were like, okay, let's go. And we went up there and was sleeping on the Red River in Fargo, North Dakota, which is right across the river from Moorhead. And 3 o'clock in the morning, the Fargo Police Department came to us and put their shotguns to our heads, took our tents and everything we owned and threw it in the river, and said we didn't want homeless people here. So I was like, okay. And all I had on was a pair of shorts and a t-shirt, no socks, because I was sleeping.
How old were you at this time?
32.
Okay.
And we walked to a Dorothy Day house in Moorhead, and they let us in. And then the director told me I needed to call the news reporters. And I'm like, I'm homeless, nobody cares, really they don't. And he's like, no, call Jason Branby from Channel 4. So I did. And the next day at 1 o'clock, there was 15 news stations outside the place, and I got interviewed. And then we were sitting in the shelter, and 9 o'clock at night, the director comes to me, you got a phone call, and the first words out of my mouth, oh my God, my mom saw me. And it was the mayor of Fargo wanting a meeting the next day to find out what happened. So we went to the City Hall in Fargo, and the police wouldn't let us inside. And so we got in a shouting match, and they threatened to arrest us. And then the mayor finally came down and let us in. And when we got up to his chambers, the chief of police and the 4 officers that held us at gunpoint were sitting in the chambers. And I kind of panicked. I was like, oh no, this isn't good. And the mayor said, I want you to tell me what happened. So we told him what happened. He looked at the chief and said, is that what happened? And the chief goes, yep. And he goes, good, you're fired. And all 4 officers are fired.
Wow.
And he fired the chief of police and the 4 officers. And then he asked me if I would be the liaisons between the city and the homeless population. And I was flabbergasted because here I've been homeless for so many years, and I had a lot of issues, but
So he offered you a job?
nope. It was just a volunteer thing.
But you took it.
Yeah, I said, yeah, but I don't have a place to stay. And he goes, well, hopefully you work that out. And I'm like, well, okay. And I was walking away, and this lady stopped and said, hey, can I talk to you? And I'm like, yeah. And she goes, what would it take to get you off the streets? And I said, a place to live would help. And so she took me to a coffee house, and she bought a newspaper, and then she gave me a bunch of quarters because back then we didn't have cell phones. And I called, made appointments, and went and looked at the first apartment I looked at. I really liked it and was like, yes, I can get into here. And the guy was ready to let me sign the lease, and then he goes, where do you live now? And I said, I'm homeless. He said, I can't rent to you. And it was everything that Barb Stanton, the lady that helped me, could do to keep me off of him, because I was flabbergasted. I'm like, you complain about the homeless, here I have the means to pay for this, but you won't rent to me because I'm homeless, but you don't like me because I'm homeless. And we went to the next place, and the landlord asked me where I was staying, and I was reluctant to answer him, and I said, I'm homeless, and he goes, good. We'll waive the deposit in the first month's rent. You can move in right now. So I got in there, and then Barb drove me around to a couple of thrift stores, and we got some furniture and stuff. And then she left. And I remember the first day standing at the light switch, turning the lights on and off, and going and running the water. And I took about 4 showers. And then 7 days later, there's a knock at the door, and I opened the door, and it was Barb. She says, we need to talk. And I thought, oh, here we go. I'm back out on the streets. And she says, what's it going to take to keep you here? And I said, well, I need to deal with my drug addiction and my mental health. So she got me into outpatient counseling and in to see a psychologist. And I haven't been homeless since. And I was married once for 15 years and have 3 amazing boys, an amazing stepdaughter that I raised. And then I got divorced. And
so really, for all of your 20s and part of your 30s, you were homeless.
Yep.
And you didn't have a place to call your own
Nope.
until you were 30-something.
33.
Which is why you found yourself flipping that light switch back and forth.
Yeah.
You probably could not believe it. This is mine.
Yeah, it's things that house people take for granted,
Yeah.
like taking a shower. A lot of house people just take that as like, I get up and want to take a shower,
Right.
big deal. Homeless people, it's not that way, and to have the freedom to just go to sleep when I wanted to go to sleep, open the door, leave when I wanted to go, not have to carry all my stuff around. It was culture shock, and I still haven't dealt with it. And I've been off the streets since 1991, and I have not dealt with the culture shock still. I haven't had time because I went from being homeless to being a homeless advocate, and I did that for 2 years in Fargo. And then the National Coalition for the Homeless in Washington, D.C. Contacted me, and they hired me to go around the country, and I spoke at all kinds of colleges, Yale, Harvard, all about homelessness and poverty. And then after that, I did that for a year, and then they hired me as a lobbyist on the Hill in D.C., and that was
Wow, and the Hill was never the same, right?
I learned why politics really is bad. It was amazing to stand beside people with Gucci suits,
Yeah.
and this is how I dressed.
Yeah.
I was a lot thinner, so I wore jeans, but I always had a shirt on that had something to do with homelessness, and they just look at me, and I didn't have $50,000 checks to hand politicians to get their vote. And I did that for a year and decided that it wasn't for me. I got tired of politicians looking me in the face and going, yeah, I agree with you. And then when the vote came up on whatever bill I was trying to push through, they'd vote no. But they agreed with me, but they wouldn't vote that way. And then I became a Vista volunteer, which is AmeriCorps now, and I went around the country starting food banks. I helped start 5 food banks in 5 different states. And then after that 2 years was up, I did 2 more years starting shelters and helped start 5 shelters across the country. Then after that, my kids were born and my life got really busy and I didn't have time to be an activist. And I got a real job, and then I got hurt, and now I'm on disability. But I raised my 3 boys by myself. And then I moved here 6 years ago. And I moved here because I'm a medical marijuana patient, because it saved my life. Took me, in 2006, I was doing about 30 pills a day, all prescribed by the doctor, and for my mental illness and for pain. And my middle son came to me one day and he said, "Dad, I need a dad, not a zombie," because the pills just made me a zombie. I mean, I'd get up and take 15, and then I'd take 15 in the afternoon, and I was just doing a Thorazine shuffle. I wasn't really coherent, and I was trying to raise 3 boys. So he asked me what it would take to get me off the prescription drugs, and I said, probably some marijuana. And about an hour later, he came back and gave me some marijuana. And I have not taken a pharmaceutical since, and I've been clean from heroin since 1992.
That is great, Jim. That is great. It sounds like the story of your life is certain people asking you, what will it take? That's kind of, I heard that a couple of times when you were telling, what will it take for you to not be homeless? What will it take? People caring and showing intention. And you also said earlier when you were talking about when you were homeless, you said, I'm homeless, nobody cares about me. So it sounds like the community is so important, to reach out to these people, to say, we do care. What will it take? What can I do? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and that's one thing with HomesNOW that we really emphasize with all our volunteers. And with everybody we talk about, if anybody's ever seen me at City Hall meetings or seen my rants on Facebook, I always say, you don't know what homeless people need. I don't know what homeless people need. We need to start asking them, what do you want and what do you need?
What will it take? What do you want?
Ask them what they want, because if you come to them, and this is where a lot of people make a mistake. I know what you need, I know what you want. That'd be like me telling you, I know what you need. You need to do this. Well, if you don't want to do that, or you don't need that, then all that energy is getting wasted.
Right.
And a lot of money gets wasted. If you're forcing somebody to do something they don't want to do, and then they fail, I wonder why they failed. Maybe ask them what they want or need. And it's amazing when we do our homeless summits every month that we've been doing for 1 year and 9 months. When you ask a homeless person what they want, you might have in the back of your head, I think I know what they want or what they need. And they'll totally shock you. It's nothing that you would have thought about. When we are having homeless people fill out our applications for Winter Haven, one of the questions in there is, what do you want? And the next question is, what do you need? And I've had 3 or 4 homeless persons, while they're filling out, what do you mean, what do I want? And I'm like, what do you want? And they go, what do you mean? And I'm like, if you could have anything right now, what do you want? And then say, a place to live. Well, there you go. Well, nobody's ever asked them that. And you hear that constantly. And that's the way it was for me. I remember when I was on the streets and I wanted to get off, but I'd go to shelters or whatever, and they never asked me what I wanted. They just told me, you got to do these 10 things and then we'll help you. And I was like, I can't do those 10 things. You know, it wasn't. So community is everything. And you know, one of our things at HomesNOW is everybody deserves love, respect, and dignity. I don't care who you are. The bigots deserve love, respect, and dignity. The homeless people, the drug addicts, the mentally ill, everybody deserves that. We're all humans. We're all on this planet together. I've seen it with politics. I see it with everything. The divide and conquer. If we can divide you into this little group and put you in this pigeonhole, then we can control you. And if people would stop doing that, the world would be such a better place, I think.
So who is Homes Now, Not Later?
Okay, that was, it's me and Doug Gufferson. We used to run the Bellingham for Bernie campaign here. You probably saw my Bernie mobile all over town. It's all painted for Bernie and got like 58,000 signatures. And me and Doug put on 300 events for Bernie in Bellingham and did a Bernie concert here. And then I traveled 44,000 miles campaigning for Bernie in my car. And I went to the Democratic National Convention. So I was really involved in Bernie because I finally heard somebody I could believe in. And we were sitting in Doug's house after Bernie was out and it was Hillary, and I was like, what do we do? I felt empty because I'd taken a break from being an activist and I got so active with Bernie. And I go, I love doing this. I love doing grassroots organizing. It's what I was meant to do. I'm really good at it. And he goes, I don't know. And I'm like, hey, I got an idea. Let's build tiny homes for the homeless. And he went, huh? I'm like, let's build tiny homes for the homeless. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, we just build tiny homes, 10 by 10 homes, and we put people in them, and then we get them into housing, because the first thing homeless people needs to be safe and secure, because when you're homeless, you're in survival mode 24/7. So all you're thinking about is where am I going to sleep, where am I going to eat, and where am I going to go to the bathroom, and how can I avoid the police? So once you get people stable, then they can start dealing with the other issues, like with me. We totally believe in housing first, so I explained the whole plan, and Doug went, okay, let's do it. And I've been trying to do this since 1994 and could get nobody to back me. I wasn't going to do it by myself, and he's like, yeah, let's do it. And I really liked working with Doug with Bernie stuff. We kind of click. We're totally opposites. We're not best friends. We just work really good together. He's got qualities that I needed, and I'm the pusher and the idea guy, and he helps make it happen. And so he said, okay, and I said, but we got to be in 501c3 first. So we filed our paperwork, and a week later we had our paperwork back from the state.
And Homes Now, Not Later was born.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's funny how we came up with that name, because he goes, what are we going to call it? And I'm like, oh, no, something about now. He goes, how about Homes Now? And I'm like, yeah, how about Homes Now, Not Later? And that's as simple as it was.
That was it.
That was it.
That was it.
And that was June of 2017.
So Homes Now, Not Later is taking on Winter Haven, this temporary encampment behind City Hall. Talk about that. Give me the details of that. How many people are going to be in Winter Haven? How does it work?
Winter Haven will be the first temporary legal place for homeless to sleep outside. And that's a big deal, because even though there's 417 homeless people every night sleeping outside, there was no place legal for them to sleep outside. Mm-hmm. So this is the first of the kind here. The city says we can have 40 people, 20 tents and 40 people. Homes Now says no, we can have 20 tents and 30 people, because we don't want, we hear it all the time, we're going to be just like Seattle now. And I'm like, no, we're not, because we don't want to do it like Seattle. We don't want any more than 30 people in a community, because we think that's big enough and easy enough to manage. Mm-hmm. And to us, it's not about how many people can we cram in, it's can we provide the services that those people need. So
that's a good point. Yeah.
We might expand to 35. It depends. Certain situations might let us double up people in tents. But we don't want 40, we don't want 50. The city says we can have 100 in one camp, and we're like, that's insanity. Mm-hmm. That's the problem they're having at the drop-in centers, too many people, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. and not enough trained professionals. So the smaller, we can help one person at a time, and our goal is, for Winter Haven, isn't about, we're going to give people a place to stay for 90 days, and then they're going to go back in the woods. A matter of fact, homeless people are being interviewed right now at the library. Their final interviews to see if they get in or not. And if they're not wanting to improve their lives and get off the streets, Winter Haven isn't for them.
Right.
This isn't just a place to come hang out and have fun and rest for 30 days, 90 days and leave. Our goal is, out of the 30 people that move in at first, 15 of them will be housed in permanent housing by the end of the 90 days. That's our goal. If we can do 50%,
Yeah.
and then once people move out, we can move more people in. So we're hoping we can go through 90 people, 30 at a time.
So the tent isn't going to be, here's 30 to 40 people in this camp for 90 days. It's going to be dynamic. Like, this is somewhere that you can live for a couple of weeks while you figure something else out, and then they move, and then someone else moves into Winter
Right.
Haven. Okay.
And we're working with the homeless outreach team, the HOT team. But we're working with a couple mental health professionals, a couple of housing specialists, because our goal is to hook them up in spurs. But you can't ask a homeless person to do this until they get safe and get some rest.
Right.
Because a lot of homeless people out there are only getting 1-2 hours sleep a day.
Yeah.
So the first 7 days that they're in Winter Haven, I don't care if they sleep for 7 days.
Sure.
Just get rested,
Sure.
get your mind together, and then we'll deal with the issues that will take the barriers away. Like we did at the sleep out when we did it on City Hall last year. We housed 18 people out of that sleep out just by taking barriers out of the way. So Winter Haven is our proof of concept. It's when we can prove to the city, government, and to the community that what we've been saying for the last year and 7 months, we can do.
Okay.
And we're hoping that this isn't the end, this is just the beginning. We have huge goals for 2019. We want to build 4 tiny home cities, communities, 20 tiny homes apiece in 2019.
How can we help?
Just get involved. Go to HomesNOW.org/volunteer. Sign up to volunteer. We need money. We need people. We need the community. Something HomesNOW has said since the beginning. HomesNOW can't do it by themselves. The city can't do it by itself. The mission can't do it by itself. The police department can't. It takes the community. It takes everybody to come together. And I just want to emphasize, this is drug and alcohol free camp. There will be no drinking, no drugs allowed. We got 22-page handbook that the residents have to do. All the daily stuff that goes on in Winter Haven, the residents are responsible for it. Basically, HomesNOW is there to support them, not to babysit them, not to micromanage them. We're there to, if they have a need, we want to help them get that. Not necessarily do it for them, but give them the path forward.
You are asking them, what do you need? What do you want? What will it take?
Yep. And then when they give me that answer, then I'll do everything in my power to make it happen. And I don't give up, in case people haven't noticed.
How does it make you feel, having Winter Haven a reality?
I'm really overwhelmed. I'm humbled to the max. So many emotions: joy, happiness, fear. Somebody came to me last night after our public meeting. We had a public meeting where we invited the public to come hear about Winter Haven and answer any concerns and questions. It was amazing. Nobody came there that was against it. Everybody supported it. And after the meeting, this lady walked up to me and she says, I admire you so much because I have dreams, but I always say, oh, they'll be hard. So I just give up on them. And she goes, you've had a dream and you didn't stop. And I'm like, well, something my dad always told me when I was a kid. If you're going to do something, don't do it half. Do it all the way. He also said, if not me, then who? If not now, then when? And that stuck in my head. The tape plays in my head all the time. And I'm having fun now. The process getting here was not fun, and we know we ruffled a lot of feathers. Doug and I had a plan from the very first day of how we were going to get to today, and we had a lot of people trying to misdirect us. And no, you got to go. You got to be nice. You need to put a suit and tie on. You need to do this, and we would just look at them and go, yeah, okay, well, if you think you can do it better, go for it. And nobody stepped up, and we just kept plugging with political pressure. Our whole goal was to change the narrative. The narrative in Bellingham's always been the homeless are bad people. And we wanted to convince the community that homeless people they used to be your neighbors. And they are somebody's son, daughter, mother, brother, aunt, uncle, grandmother, grandfather. Mm-hmm. And so we just kept plugging at it. And once we got the community behind us, and then we'd go to city council and talk at city council meetings, and we had community members speaking up, and we just kept the pressure on and never gave up. And did we always do it right? No. I remember a week before we got the news that we were actually going to go to the process, we had some volunteers telling me and Doug that your guys' leadership's really bad and you're killing HomesNOW. And we started doubting what we were doing, and I finally told Doug, I said, I don't care. We've been at this for a year and 9 months. We're doing something right because we're still here. And then that week, that Thursday, when we met with the city and they said they wanted to go forward with Winter Haven and we needed to fill out all the paperwork, and we posted on Facebook, the volunteers that thought we were killing Facebook had to apologize. And it was kind of rewarding because it reminded me of when I was homeless, when I'd make a decision and people go, oh, you can't make that decision. You're homeless, so let me make it for you. And so I started feeling that right until Winter Haven was getting ready to go. I started doubting everything. Well, maybe I'm doing this all wrong. And now we're here, and yesterday we had the fence delivered on site. And then tomorrow we're going to put the fence up, the pallets are going to be brought, the wood's going to be brought, the container, and Saturday we're going to start building the platforms. And it's fun now. It's like all the crying, all the nights without sleep, all the cussing I did, and the rants I did on Facebook, and just the frustration with the process. And it's not about the people that work in planning or the city council or the mayor. The process, the way the process is so hindering, and it takes everything twice as long. One of the things I've always said since I've been an activist, grassroots, whatever the issue is, if you want it to slow down, ask the government for help, and it'll come to a dead stop. Because then it's all about politics, and that's one thing HomesNOW is so proud about is we don't care if you're a Republican, we don't care if you're a Democrat, we don't care if we don't care. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of funny because we have the president of the Against Open and Carry volunteering with us, and we have the president of the Open and Carry group that advocates for Open and Carry volunteering with us. And there's a rule: when you come on a HomesNOW project or an event, leave your politics out of it. Yeah. And we always say it's not about Jim, it's not about Doug, it's not about HomesNOW, it's not about the volunteers, it's about helping the homeless, and that's all we've ever wanted to do. And we don't have any hidden agendas. And another thing we're really proud about is we don't take taxpayers' money. And we're all volunteers. Nobody gets paid at HomesNOW. Nobody will ever get paid at HomesNOW. And we're funded by the city, by the citizens of the community and businesses. So,
wow.
Wow,
awesome. I knew it was going to be a pleasure meeting you, and I wasn't wrong. You are definitely passionate about this, and this is a wonderful thing that you're doing for our community, Jim. Thank you. The website again is
HomesNOW.org.
And there's you can find all the volunteer opportunities there, all of the needs, how to donate if you are so inclined. Thank you, Jim Peterson from HomesNOW, Not Later. part of Winter Haven, and we'll see you next time on Bellingham Voices.